everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with today's talk. Welcome to A Punk Perspective with Chris Ritter as a part of our second annual Midwest Design Week. My name is Ashton Span, and I volunteer as the co-vice president for AIGA Cincinnati, one of the 70 plus chapters of AIGA, the Professional Association for Design. This week, we've had a lot of really great events, all centered around this year's theme, Access to Design. I also want to take some time to thank our sponsors. This event would not have been possible without their support. So thank you to Saatchi and Saatchi X, the University of Arkansas Graphic Design Program, Creatives on Call, Salesforce, Deco and Moneypenny, and the rest of our amazing sponsors. We are grateful for your support and honored that you have entrusted us to fulfill our goals for Midwest Design Week in a meaningful way. We're ready to go ahead and get started, and I'm really excited to introduce today's speaker, Chris Ritter. Christopher A. Ritter is an artist, designer, and co-founder of C90, creating strong narratives and visual identities for brands looking to use design to stand out from their competition. He has won national awards for his design work and has been featured repeatedly by a variety of design publications. As an artist, Ritter has collaborated and has had his work shown beside notable artists such as Fail, the London Police, Ivan Crush, Vince Feel Free, Matt Hermel, Gene Spatz, Crash Roar, Your Warhol, Kevin T. Kelly, and many more. So thanks so much, Chris, for joining us today. I'm going to hand things over to you. Feel free to go ahead and share your screen.
All right. Thank you, Ashton. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. I'm Chris Ritter, and this is my talk called Punk Perspective here. So let me take just a second. Ashton did such a great job of, introducing me and everything, but this is me, Chris Ritter. My friends growing up always called me Critter, as you could kind of see why. Kind of lends to the whole, a little bit of punk persona there. But in a super brief nutshell, I'm going to introduce myself and say I do art. I do quite a bit of it, and I do branding. These are two things that really kind of define me. I think as a creative, and as you kind of look, list of people that I've worked with, you probably recognize at least one or two of them, I would hope. I'm going to tell you guys, a little bit about, what got me to this point. So, right now, I'm running an agency in Cincinnati called C90. I'm the co-founder, creative director. I'll also talk to you a little bit about how I met my partners with C90 today. But as I go and talk a little bit, I'm going to be, blabbing a lot about myself today. I'll talk to you a little bit about, where I grew up, how I grew up, how I got into design, a little bit about work career, why you should care, and just some other things about, what I've learned and what I think could be valuable for a lot of those who are watching now. So get a little bit into myself and what kind of made Chris the person that he is as young Chris. So I grew up in a city in northern Kentucky called Erlanger, which if you're in the Cincinnati area, you might have heard of it before. It's about 20,000 people. It's called the Friendship City. But if you look, on the map of Kentucky, you'll see that Erlanger is all the way up at the top. This is northern Kentucky, which is I find to be a pretty unique region. Because when you tell people that you're from Kentucky, the first thing that people say typically is, aren't you in horse country? And the answer is no, we are not. There's no horses in Erlanger. People ask, do you live in Appalachia? Do you live in the hills? And that sort of thing. That's definitely not where I grew up. That is not Erlanger at all. People that are familiar with northern Kentucky know that Cincinnati is literally just a river apart from northern Kentucky. So, people say, oh, well, you're pretty much just like Cincinnati, you're part of this big city. No, that's not true. We're in a different state. There is differences there. And people from Cincinnati a lot of times will tell you that you're not, you're not from Cincinnati. You're Northern Kentuckian. I have people call me Southern, which I think is actually pretty hilarious. I do wish sometimes that I had some Southern traits with perfect manners and a little bit of the Southern genteel way, but it is not true. So yeah, like what do we, what is Erlanger? What is this place? So when I'm growing up, Erlanger is a railroad town. It's actually a very old city, and it kind of grew up with the railroad. So this was kind of the landscape, that I grew up with. It's very much a blue collar type of town. A lot of my, friends growing up, their parents were mechanics and technicians, and they were working on, mostly very blue collar jobs. So, we have, railroad that runs right through it. We have strip malls galore. Retail's in a bad spot, so most of them are actually vacant right now. It was actually an old Kmart. My first job was there. Most people that I grew up with lived in, cheap apartments. That's definitely where we were. And looking at just kind of the culture of the neighborhood and what really grew up with, so we're what I would call maybe a light beer type of town, right? So it being very blue collar, we like to work really hard. We also like to play very hard. So we actually did quite a bit of, we'll just say, partying. Okay, a lot of drinking, a lot of having fun, a lot of having a good time. And then as I kind of grew up and got a little bit older, I really found out that something that our city was really known for was actually fist fighting. So, with rowdy partying and, a real blue collar crowd, it could be a little bit of a tough place, to be sometimes where, it happened that you would have an argument or something. And, there was a lot of fighting actually. But the interesting thing about this is sometimes it was actually really organized in the way that it works. So I remember a time when I was actually a little kid and I was doing a fundraiser, going door to door selling popcorn, and my neighbor slammed his door in my face. I was really upset. I was like 8. I was like 8 years old. I went and told my parents. And I said, "Hey, this guy down the street just slammed the door in my face. I don't know what was up with that guy." And turns out that my father and him were actually in a boxing league where they went house to house and actually just kind of did organized boxing. So that was the thing that I found as I was older was actually like super prevalent in our city, which I thought was really interesting. This is actually a quote that my father had told me. I was probably about 8 years old, actually, when he told me this as well. And, it kind of gave me a good perspective on where I'm from. So he said, "Son, you're from Erlanger. You never survive in the country and you never survive in the city. But, if you're smart, you'll be able to play the line in any situation, that life throws at you." And this is something that, really stuck with me for a good part of my life. And the idea here is that, okay, well, I'm not Northern, I'm not Southern. I don't look like a lot of the people in the rest of my state. I'm in a unique region. So what can I do to relate with people all the time? And that's really where I took this. And that's the mentality that, I feel like I've lived my life, to a certain extent to date. So he told me this, and ironically, right after he told me this, he actually taught me how to box. So even if you are, trying to find the best of situations, I think his message was, you still got to be pretty tough, son. So that was me. So, I kind of took this, this little bit of knowledge that my father gave me, and really was able to do a lot of different types of things growing up. I was in a myriad of activities. Some of the things I was able to do, I was actually an Eagle Scout growing up. I was a captain of my football team. This is me on the prom court. But, you know, at the end of the day, I was still definitely a punk teenager growing up, partying too hard for sure. And also just, you know, on the right here, you'll see this is actually a piece of artwork that I did for school. You know, it was always a little bit raw. So that's just that's a little bit about just, you know, where I grew up and how I kind of got to, you know, the point where I'm getting ready to, you know, graduate high school and go into college. So, and that's where I really found design, was in college. So I went to Northern Kentucky University, which is the closest major university, you know, to where I grew up. A lot of my friends commuted there, and you know, I was able to, you know, kind of commute there for a couple of years. So I went to NKU, and it was a really great experience for me. But I went in to college initially as a chem major. You know, I liked science growing up. I always thought that labs were really fun, and decided that, you know, I was going into chemistry. I was gung ho, and you know, I was going to study medicine, do all these great things. And about 2 years in, I was flunking out terribly. It was very difficult. This wasn't something that I felt like I ended up having, you know, very little natural talent for this. And I flunked out of organic chemistry with a 23%. So 2 years into college, and I'm in a little bit of a crisis mode as far as, you know, what am I going to be doing for the rest of my time here? I've already invested, you know, what, you know, you're supposed to get out in 4 years. So I've already been there for half the time I'm supposed to be. What am I going to do? So I did what every designer does, and I go to the Career Development Center and I take an aptitude test. And I talked to a guidance counselor, and she gives me a test that looks very much like this. It says, you know, fill out the bubbles, answer these questions, and let me know what or I'll let you know what the results are. So, you know, the winner is graphic design. So that was, you know, that's actually how I came into this field. So the winner's graphic design, and I was like, oh, that's pretty neat. It seems like a maybe more fun, you know, career track than say chemistry. But really, I had no idea what I was doing. I was not, you know, an art school kid. You know, I was, you know, the science guy, if you would even call that. I was never really an amazing student in that, but definitely was not into the arts that much. But I did have some knowledge. I did have some knowledge into it. I'm also oddly a rare, you know, second generation designer, which you don't have a whole lot of us, for sure. So this is actually my great grandfather's stationery, which I remember quite a bit growing up. And you'll see, you know, Raymond G. Brown, artist and designer. So in the 50s and 60s, my great grandpa was actually, you know, what you would call a commercial artist at the time, in downtown Cincinnati, and he worked with all different types of companies. And you know, when he died, we actually got all of his stationery. So I had just have stacks and stacks of all this paper, and I would just draw on the back. So, you know, you see the picture of the Roadrunner there. That was always kind of my, you know, my scrap paper, you know, if you will, where I would draw on it and things like that. I finally got to the point where, you know, I asked my mom, you know, one, I never called my great grandpa Raymond. So I said, hey, you know, what is this? Why am I always drawing on this? And she kind of told me a little bit about what a commercial artist was. And that was really all my exposure, you know, that was all my exposure to that. So, you know, growing up and, you know, going to school and that sort of thing. This is actually a fourth grade report card that I got, and you'll see my lowest marks on here actually was originality and visual artwork. I scored the lowest of all these things on here, so it was quite a surprise. It's quite a surprise to be told that I should be in this industry. So, yeah, I thought a little bit about like all the things that I would do. I show you this because literally everything that I had in high school, whether it be a planner or a, you know, a notebook or my locker or whatever, I would always be just cutting out what I would find to be weird or interesting imagery. And I would just tape them up everywhere, so literally everything I had, all these like weird collages on here. And I thought, well, maybe this is something that I can, figure out how to do, when I'm in school. And I said, oh, hey, what the heck? Let's go and we'll give it a try. It can't be worse than my 23 in chemistry, right? So get into design, and it's looking a little bit different for me than some of those cut up collages and goofy imagery and that sort of thing. It's actually a lot of this software that we're all probably familiar with at this point, and I was not good at it. Software was actually something I was really struggled with as I was going into as I was getting to know design, getting to learn more about design. So I kind of had to compensate a little bit. So as I was looking at, what I was using to create imagery and to create messages and that sort of thing, I kind of went back to my roots a little bit, which was, hey, let's cut up paper, let's found imagery. You can use pens, glue sticks and scissors and, very lo-fi types of things, right? So when I got into this, I realized that actually a lot of the rock posters that I was very familiar with growing up from all these different punk bands, things that I would see hung up in the neighborhood, things that my friends made on their own, photocopied and hung up around town to promote their shows. I was really surprised to learn that all the techniques that I was kind of, in my mind, hacking together so that I could, essentially pass a class, these techniques were exactly the same things that these bands were using to create these really iconic posters that I just thought was like killer awesome design, right? So very inspired by that because, as I said, I was having a lot of trouble with the whole digital realm. And this is so lo-fi, I can really get into it. So I kind of completely changed the way that I looked at, school, and I looked at the way that I was doing, artwork, and I was doing, my different projects. So this is actually the first piece of design work that I would ever say that I was like kind of proud of, right? So this is student work. And our assignment was to do a poster for Amnesty International. And there were some prompts. I can't remember the entire brief, but I didn't know what to do. So I just kind of like figured out how to do stencil spray paint and figure out how I can bring in different color and, just use this really lo-fi technique. I was just really taking poster board and cutting out, different stencils with this and spray painting a piece of masonite. And it actually turned out pretty well. I remember I actually got really great response from the class, and I was super surprised because I was definitely worried about all the imperfections in it rather than, kind of what the finished piece looked like. So this was received really well, and I continued to just experiment, with these different lo-fi techniques. So, looking at, how do we use typography in a cut up type of way? How do we start to bring together things like materials with photocopiers and drawings and that sort of thing. And I really started to land on this, I think really pretty interesting aesthetic. I was getting pretty excited about the work that I was making. Common themes were definitely collage, a lot of bold typography, a lot of cut up things, a lot of spray paint. I learned how to screen print when I was in college. I figured out how to do that by myself. That was different. But as I said, there was always kind of this like hand done type of element, pretty much anything that I did. This is actually a student assignment where we just had to, kind of look at what does, an editorial design look like. So really just experimenting a lot with layout, using photography here. I shot this not very good photo and, made a magazine cover out of it, drew this, I think an interesting masthead here, and was really liking where I was landing. So, after I got out of design school, I have this really interesting portfolio of work. And I was very excited about what I was doing. I'm thinking, okay, well, I am really jiving with this career path. I'm really excited to get into it. And as I start, looking at different businesses in Cincinnati, where the closest metropolitan area is, it all looks like this. Procter and Gamble is headquartered here, as is Kroger, as is a lot of different blue chip Fortune 500 companies. And the aesthetic that you see here is pretty different than the aesthetic that you see that I was developing as I was in college. So when I look at this and I say, okay, well, is this something that I can do? And I'm like, no, I don't know that, I don't know that I could do this. This looks very different. And I was very, very intimidated at the time. Just say, I don't know how to do this. So as I graduated, me and my girlfriend at the time, actually, we found out that we were pregnant with my first son. It was a picture of him in Detroit next to my favorite piece of public art, as a matter of fact. But we found out that we were pregnant with him, and we had just gotten married as well. And I graduated, and I have this weird portfolio of work, and I'm trying to get a job, and I'm looking at all these different agencies here. So I said, hey, anybody, right? I'm spreading my work all over, trying to get as many interviews as I can. I said, hey, I'm new here, just graduated. I got some cool ideas. What do you think? And they were like, no, sorry, hard pass. It was an interesting way to go. So big agency in town here, LPK, a lot of friends work there. Is actually super successful business. And it was one of the places that was kind of earmarking. I said, okay, well, I want to get a job at this place. They're doing big packaging projects. They're doing a lot of interesting stuff. And I said, okay, well, maybe I can get a job there. So I had a really great interview, and I sat down and I talked with one of their creative directors for, I think, an hour and a half, showed them all my work, showed them everything that I did, in school. And my response was this: I said, hey, we love your stuff, but you could never work here. And that's actually what they told me. And at the time I was under a lot of pressure. I had a child on the way. I just got married. I'm trying to build my career, and I was really, really confused by this feedback. I was like, oh man, this is a bummer. I definitely just don't know what to do, with myself at this point. And I was really, really, really perplexed. So that's kind of, the state that I was at as I graduated college, right? And as I said, I was getting my work out to everybody that I could think of, and finally got a call back from an agency called Hyperquake. They're still around, still friends with everybody there. They're in town, and they said, hey, I'm going to give you a shot. I think that you have a pretty unique body of work, and there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment here, but we really like the way you think. And that was feedback that I got actually after I had been hired, and I asked about my interview, and they said, we just really like the way you think, because the projects that they were throwing me on almost immediately were just real blue sky innovation projects that were actually consumer led. So this is actually a picture of a project that I did with Procter and Gamble. It was inspired by the idea of fashion and how fashion can actually change the way that they think about their brands and the way that they think about marketing towards consumers. And what I found was I was actually really good at relating to different types of people. So you can kind of see the personas on here. It's everything from New York to Tokyo to Brazil. And doing a little bit of research and really figuring out what makes these people tick and what kinds of designs and marketing they would enjoy. Something that I feel like my upbringing really helped me with, getting a lot of empathy for this. So it was kind of ironic that almost that like P&G packaging that dominates this city was what kept me away from a lot of agencies where this type of work, I just felt like I really fit in well. And I got an opportunity there to work with a lot of different companies. GE Healthcare did, full lobby experience there in Waukesha, Wisconsin. That was really interesting work for me. Got to work with like Pure doing, collaborations with MIT and RISD to, keep plastic water bottles, out of landfills. My favorite thing actually there was a lot of the self-promotion work, because this is where I could start to get, my hands dirty and really start to do a lot of things like hand lettering and that sort of thing. And actually, it's probably my last year there, we actually did a holiday cookbook with the team, because we had, as with a lot of creative agencies, we have a lot of people that like to cook and they really cared about food. And it was getting close to the holidays, and we said, okay, well, what's going to be our holiday gift? So we had everybody actually bring in food for Thanksgiving, for the office, and we were going to have a, quote unquote contest for who can make the best dish. But the contest was actually to figure out which foods at a holiday get together were best in a food fight. So we did eat, quite a bit of the food, but we saved one dish for everything and tested out, hey, if we threw this up against the wall, what is going to happen? We made an enormous mess, as you can see. But this was the type of stuff that I was really excited by this, and it was fun. We actually, won quite a bit of, awards for this work, and it was something that we showed to clients. Really enjoyed it. About that same time, the partners at Hyperquake split. And I decided to go with one of the partners who was starting a new agency called Crush Republic at the time. So I left, left Hyperquake and went to Crush Republic and got to do, some interesting stuff there. Their focus was almost entirely on consumer-led design. So we would do a lot of research projects that would be very hands-on with consumers. So this is actually a picture of a project I did with Nike, where we were working with a large set of high school students to figure out, hey, how would you interpret the way that you are on the field? How would you show people something like, elite strength, or how would you show something like super speed? And we actually worked with a place in Northside here in Cincinnati called Toy Lab, and made actually all these figurines. So we had like a very physical thing that they were able to build with us. Which parlayed into, some great campaigns. I believe Black Mamba, the Kobe Bryant, brand at Nike, actually kind of came from some of this work, which is pretty interesting. Got to do some interesting work with Columbia Sportswear and Mountain Hardware. This is kind of my first foray into like branding proper. So, visual identity and that sort of thing came from, as I was working at this agency. And this is where I think I really got my love for like Swiss design. It was almost part of the brief. So, we wanted something clean and nice and Swiss and grids and that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different, but I really kind of fell in love with it as well. As I was at Crush, they actually brought in a consultant, and his name was Jay Becker. It was not Steve Bedrosian. But they look the same. And he came in as a consultant, and he was actually helping try to get like a different business unit up off the ground. And it was a great reciprocal for them, because they needed his business acumen, and he wanted to get into this design field, which he literally had no experience in whatsoever at the time. He's like, I just want to learn more about it, and I really like design. So he comes up to me and he says, hey, I'm thinking about, getting into the design business. What do you think? And I was like, sweet, cool, I'm in. And it was really that simple. We actually grew up in the same neighborhood. He's also from Erlanger, believe it or not, and found out that he was, living about a block away from where I was currently living at the time. And we just hit it off. We hit it off right away, and we said, okay, let's go and do this thing. So naturally, the first thing that we really needed was we needed to figure out where the heck are we going to go and start an office. So we were going around Covington, Kentucky, which is where I live currently. It's right across the river from Cincinnati, if you're not familiar. And we're going, around this neighborhood, which, at the time was, I would say, not the preferred place to be, just to set up a design shop. We're looking around and we're trying to find, an open storefront, that we can get into. And we ran into this guy right here, Mike Amon. And, he's, in the neighborhood, and we run into him, and we've met before, but not really, didn't really know each other that well, but we knew that he was creative. He was a designer as well. And he says, hey, I have this building on Pike Street in Covington. There's a gallery on the first floor, and I just work in my studio on the second floor. I just sit here all day long. I have 6,000 square feet, and it's pretty lonely. So tell me a little bit about what you guys want to do. And, we just pretty much cobbled it together and said, hey, we want to get into design and do some badass shit. And he's like, cool, you can have, as much space as you want, as long as you let me in on it. So we're like, cool, this guy is awesome. Let's go and do this thing. And we formed an agency called BLDG in 2012. It started out with the three of us. And, we were kind of gung ho. We said, okay, this guy rules. Mike was a really experienced designer. He had a lot of connections into kind of the urban contemporary art scene as well. And we were just really excited about that. So, we're all in, and, I like to show people this to just kind of show you what it's like to be an entrepreneur sometimes. So my first day actually at building, I showed up and I got out of my car, and there's actually a dead snake, and I cropped out the used condom on the ground. But that's just kind of show you, like, that's the type of place that Covington was at the time. So we actually had a ton of space, and we were able to do all kinds of things, but it wasn't always the nicest neighborhood. It's actually changed quite a bit in the 9 years since this has happened. But we kind of started here, just cobbling it together, and we were able to do all kinds of really great things while we were at building. So, we did, big brand projects. This is work from the city of Lexington. We were able to do some really great stuff in athletics, doing campaigns for Xavier basketball, which is really interesting. We had a screen printing press, which we used for so many different things. My favorite thing actually being for rock posters. So I have to work with a couple of different pretty neat bands. This is for Animal Collective. Made this poster that actually interacts with different types of light. So, when you shine it in, red, green, or blue light, you can actually see like different animals kind of come to the front rather than, kind of the jumbled mess that you see here when it's white. So we got to do really neat things like that. And when you're doing, rock posters, it's pretty much, hey, do something really interesting, and we'll see if the band thinks it's okay. And if it's cool enough, they say yes, and you print the thing. That's kind of how it works. Got to do, this, interesting posters working with models. So this is actually, I actually hand painted this on this woman's face for Fantagram. And ironically, I showed you this picture of me on prom court. She was actually on prom court with me as well. So always keep your friends. And I was able to do this pretty neat piece of design work. We did all kinds of stuff with urban contemporary artists. Ended up doing a lot of public artwork. So you see here, this is actually a 3-piece mural that we collaborated with Fail out of Brooklyn to do. This is in Covington. This is actually right behind where our studio was. And doing all kinds of work like that. We got to do some pretty high profile design work. This is for the Livestrong Foundation. This is highly award winning. And also, again, going back into this idea of artwork, we had a gallery on our first floor, so we were doing art shows all the time. And when you are doing art shows and you invite really high profile artists, and you own the gallery and you're an artist, you can put your artwork up in the gallery with some really great stuff. You're really great talented artists. So when Ashton was going through the long list of artists that I've displayed my work next to, that's how it happened. So this is a piece that I did for a show with Gene Spatz. Gene Spatz was a paparazzi photographer in Studio 54 days. And we did this giant New Year's Eve show where we had all these really great photographs from, you know, all the big 1970s celebrities. And we asked all kinds of artists. I think we had like 13 different nations represented. And I think there was 30 artists that we were working with on this show. And we just said, hey, here's a photo of, you know, we had everybody. We had John Travolta, we had Jackie Onassis Kennedy. This is Hugh Hefner. And we just said, hey, take this photo, do whatever you want with it. So, you know, this was my interpretation. And, you know, just kind of keeping the whole, you know, the whole persona of, you know, what I'm good at, you know, is throwing a party, you know, hey, let's do some artwork and let's get some people together and let's have a huge party for New Year's Eve. So packed the house, had some great artwork, sold some stuff, brought in some great art, and we just, you know, had a really great time. This is me at that same party. So, you know, we were definitely the non-pretentious art studio that just really like to have a good time. And I think this is kind of the essence of creativity here. And we were rolling. It was fantastic. We had everything going for us. We had great, you know, branding coming in. We had design work. We had all different types of public art projects that we were working on. And we were really getting some notoriety really quick. I mean, this is almost all in the space of about a year. And, you know, tragically, Mike Amon, best friend, business partner, got cancer and died within 6 months. It was very, very, very quick, very fast. And it was very sad. And you can imagine as an agency, when your leader, you know, gets sick very, very quickly at the age of 33, it was all very unexpected for everybody. So we did what we did best, you know, which was call up our art friends. This is the London Police, who were actually from Amsterdam. This is the London Police, and we said, hey, let's do a giant tribute to Mike, and we're going to paint murals all over Covington. And, you know, this is actually one of the murals that they put him in, as a matter of fact. And let's do this giant tribute, you know, and we were able to do this, and really the whole city rallied around, you know, our business. And, you know, the passing of Mike was not just something that was prevalent in our studio, but, you know, it kind of permeated the entire city. So everybody really rallied behind us. We were able to do all kinds of great public artwork from it. That being said, that's a very difficult thing to run a business through, obviously. And, you know, we you know, BLDG is still running, still kicking, but, you know, Mike was definitely my right-hand man when it came to bouncing ideas, you know, creatively. So, you know, I feel like I lost a big part of my life, you know, at the time, and I was going through actually a divorce, and I had all this personal stuff. And I said, guys, I just don't think that I'm really equipped to run a business right now. So I exited, you know, the company in 2016. We're still friendly, we're still friends, all that kind of thing. But I just said, this is not going to be it for me. So my idea was, hey, let's go get a job, right? Let's get a job. Let's go find, you know, I've been doing all different types of really cool stuff lately. You know, we got some notoriety, got some awards, got all this stuff. Say, hey, really been killing it. What do you guys think? You know, do you want me to work for you? And the answer is still no. It was still no. Couldn't find a job. I actually looked for about a year. And you know, in the meantime, you know, you have to sustain yourself. So I started doing freelance work, picking up my own clients. You know, a lot of freelancers will go to agencies and that sort of thing because they have a steady stream of work. I actually went and just got clients because I was used to doing that from running BLDG. I was used to finding my own clients and, you know, figuring out, you know, how I can work with them and what kind of special things we can do. So it was actually, you know, pretty successful in a way that I was being able to pick up clients. So this is like United Way, you know, bringing in collage work to talk about, you know, pre-kindergarten education, and the creativity of preschool children and all the really interesting things that they do. Was able to do a campaign for United Way on that. I did a couple of art shows. Worked with athletics again, doing things with like Ritter, lululemon. Picked up a project with them, did a couple of projects with them actually. This is men's outerwear. Did another one for the Enlight Brawl, sports brawl, which is pretty interesting as well. I got to do my first full-length book as a freelance project, and I actually went back to my alma mater and taught while I was there. And that was pretty interesting. And one of the projects that I was working on as I was freelancing was actually a kind of small project for the Over the Rhine Chamber of Commerce. And I was living in Covington at the time, but the brief said that I had to work with somebody who had a studio in Over the Rhine. So I met up with my now current business partner, Emmett Jones. And I said, hey, I can't get this project unless I'm working with somebody from Over the Rhine. The project's mine, but I need somebody on it. So do you want to collaborate? He's like, hell yes. I have a studio here and let's go and do this thing. And we created this really interesting brand for the OTR Chamber. And that was the start of a really great working relationship. Other things I did, I got flown to LA to do some cool hunting for Adidas, looking at what kind of trends are happening on Melrose and La Brea and all the great shopping districts that's in Los Angeles. Got to go there and kind of give reports on what kind of trends should they go after. Right after that happened, right after that trip, actually, I got a phone call from an agency called Battery. And they said, hey, I do pretty much 100% Adidas work and we like what you do. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So I jumped in with both feet. And while I was at Battery, I was pretty much splitting my time between being at home and then going to New York City and going to Portland, Oregon, where Adidas is headquartered. And I was doing a lot of traveling. I did a pretty extensive amount of work with Adidas running. So I'd be working a lot with runners and trying to figure out these pretty complex problems that runners have when it comes to retail. So as I was working at Battery, I was doing a lot of work with figuring out what does a digital type of experience look like at retail. How do we get people fitted for really interesting or really perfect running shoes for what they need? I was able to work with all different types of crazy new technologies. This is something that they just released maybe about 6 months ago called Strung, which this is a cool zero waste shoe because they weave together the top of the shoe and they 3D print the bottom of the shoe so that there's no waste. And that was a really interesting project I got to work on there. While I was there, I met a guy named Theo Erasmus. He's my other business partner. And that's him in the background. This image in the middle, actually, we kind of hit it off when we both had to travel to, we had to go to Seattle for a workshop at work. And then we had to drive from Seattle to Portland, which is about a 3-hour drive. This is a picture from our drive, but that's kind of where we hit it off. And Theo's now with us. So Battery was great while it lasted, but there was, a certain point where I was like, oh, something's falling apart. I don't know what's going on. Is this place turning into a raging dumpster fire? I don't know what's going on. So I get worried. And when I get worried, I start looking for jobs again. That was a really quick no. And then, I formed C90 with Emmett Jones, who I showed you before, and he was actually finishing up a stint at a local agency here as well. He's like, I don't know that this is working out, and I said, I'm about to split my job. He said, hey, let's work together. Let's go and do it. So we meet at this bar called Mecca and kind of discuss it over, and then we decide that hey, we know the owner of this bar, let's set up a studio in here. The owner of Mecca actually said, hey, we have this front room. Would you like to set up a studio? And we said, yeah, let's go and do it. So C90 started in a bar. And this is a picture of almost the whole studio. We're doing a photo shoot here. I believe my back is actually against the wall as I'm taking this picture. So you can see, a table, we have a coffee maker, a fridge, and that's about it. And it was a small little studio that kind of started in the front of this bar. Being at a bar was pretty interesting because we were able to actually do a really cool event called Fresh Error, which was, a design conference where we were just really looking at different badasses in design that we really loved. Loved their work, really thought that they were doing some interesting work. So Dreely, who you kind of see here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but she's right in the middle there, flipping off the camera. She actually did tons and tons of work for Yeezy, worked with Kanye West extensively. Next to her, you have, director of design at the Guggenheim. And, we were able to really attract this interesting crowd of people, that we were able to collaborate with, as well as, get to speak about some really interesting work that they're doing. And that was kind of like the start, that was really the start of C90. And I think where we started to pick up a little bit of traction. So, now we're doing things like, complex, visual identity systems. We do campaigns, still doing tons of artwork and creative content here, illustration work. We do photo, video, doing a lot of stuff, with fashion and, bringing in art with models, and that sort of thing, doing things with music, lifestyle, some more illustration work. So I've talked a lot about myself, right? So it's pretty cool. Why don't you stop talking about yourself for a little bit, Chris? Who cares about any of this stuff? But that's kind of where I am today. That's where we are today. So why does this matter? Why does this matter to you? And I'm going to tell you why, because everybody has a unique story, that they're going to tell. And I just told you mine. So I've been reading this book called Rebel Ideas, and it's really brought some clarity into where I am with my career and what I've been able to do to this point. And it's kind of like, the stars have aligned a little bit, and I found it to be pretty eye-opening. So a lot of the things I'm going to be talking about here come from this book, and I really highly recommend it. Because it talks about this thing. It was a new concept for me. I'd never heard anybody talk about before, but it's called cognitive diversity. And I'll talk about this, explain it a little bit here. So the idea of cognitive diversity is they explain it in the book the exact same way that I'm going to show you here. So you have this rectangle, this rectangle on the page. This rectangle, what it really represents is like, this is a big problem. Okay. This is a problem that you by yourself cannot solve. We're not talking about planning a vacation. We might be talking about ending world hunger. That's something that not one person can do. And that's really what this box represents. And this box actually represents all of the knowledge that you need to solve this problem. So, you look at the box and you say, okay, well, let's get some individuals to try to solve this problem. So this, circle here we'll call this is an intelligent individual. And it makes sense to say, okay, well, you don't know everything, you're intelligent, you're smart, you're all these things, but you don't know everything. So we'll just fill the box up and we'll bring more people in, right? It's like, well, if you get enough, great people on the project, you'll figure out everything that you need, right? So just fill it up. So here's an example, right? So like, here's an intelligent individual that you have here. We'll say he's Ivy League educated, got great experience, he's middle-aged, he's got a little bit of a privileged background, white guy, and he's Christian. And there's an organization that is just chock full of people exactly like this, and that is the CIA, right? So the CIA actually has a long-standing reputation for just being chock full of Ivy League dudes that are ultra smart and kind of come from these privileged backgrounds. You might have seen that they actually rebranded, in the past couple of years to look very different, than that image. But traditionally, that's really what filled their employment was, all these types of people. So, going back in time a little bit to August 24th, 1996, a pretty significant thing happened with the CIA, and they got this video from somebody they really didn't know much about, and it was from Osama bin Laden. And he, in 1996, declared war on the United States, saying, okay, you are the enemy, along with some other people, and said, I'm coming to get you, in looser terms. So, as the CIA looks at this video, their reaction was, hey, how could this Saudi, squatting around a campfire be a threat to us, their thing was they just couldn't figure out how a guy in a cage could be a serious threat, or a guy in a cave, God, excuse me, guy in a cave could be a threat to the United States. They just couldn't figure out, why anybody would pay any attention to bin Laden or Al Qaeda. To them, they were really the essence of backwardness. Everything that you could possibly think of, was wrong to them. It's like, this guy could not be a threat at all. But the fact of the matter is, to the Islam faith and to a Muslim, caves are a holy place, and they actually hold very deep religious significance. It's been written post 9/11 that the magic of bin Laden's campaign was really calling up images that are deeply meaningful to Muslims and its followers, but really people who are not familiar with this or just unfamiliar, they would interpret it in very wrong ways. So you can imagine in that room, you have all these smart people in the CIA, and they're all individually very intelligent. You see all this overlap, and it's a serious overlap in knowledge, right? And this, there's lots and lots of intelligent individuals here, but this is an unintelligent team. You can really think, hey, what would one Muslim on the team have done, to prevent such an amazing tragedy? But the idea is that they had all these people, and they were a team of clones. They all had very similar experiences. They all had very similar ideas, that they bought into. And really what that causes is groupthink, and that's a thing that's very serious. So, it's very serious to have groupthink. It's not something that I think any business would strive for. But this is kind of how it happens, right? So when you surround yourself with people who think in the same way, they have very similar perspectives as you, they confirm everything, and it feels really good. It makes you feel smart. It makes you, feel like everything is in sync and clicking really well. And, the danger is groupthink. The danger is having a whole business full of clones, right? So what the book really proposes is a team of rebels. An intelligent team means that you have to cover all this space, and you can have some overlap, but you can't have a lot, right? So, wise groups, which, team of rebels is a wise group, they don't agree. They don't agree just for the sake of agreement. But the whole idea is that you bring insights from different regions to tackle the problem space. And when you think about what you can bring as an individual, there are things that make you very valuable, almost invaluable to a team. And this is an incomplete list, obviously, but these are some things that I've seen in the workplace that really change the way that people think about a project or trying to solve a problem. It's everything from, I talked a little bit about like my social economic upbringing, and family upbringing. You might have unique perspectives because of your race and culture. You might have, unique perspectives because maybe you identify as a different, as a gender a different way. Maybe you, come from a different place. Maybe you just have, interesting personal experiences. All of these things make you special for who you are, right? And, it shapes who you are as a person. So we got to ask ourselves as we're coming to a team, right? How might we use what's unique to us to bring insight to these complex problem spaces? Every business is dealing with complex problem spaces, and are getting more complex every single day because of technology, because of pandemic, because of, life is changing, because whatever reason, because social media, who knows? But all of our problems are getting more and more complex. So what can we do, right? What can we do that's special to us to bring our unique perspective and have it be useful, right? Because we want an intelligent team, right? We have to have, we want this. We want to overlap, but also have, really great insight into the problem, because we can have this, and that's not what we want, right? So, you can have a unique perspective, but if it's not actually relevant, it's not really useful. This is what they call rebels without a cause. So, we have to ask ourselves, where's your overlap? Where's your common ground with the problem space? And this is something that, as businesses are trying to deal with, these new complex problems, if you can answer that question based on your individual, experiences and what shapes you, you're going to get something that's really interesting, and something that, as you're entering a field or you're trying to, land that job, you're going to find that, your unique perspective is going to be, a really valuable thing, right? So how do we get that overlap? I'm going to use me as an example because I only know me, right? So here's an example. This is just, my personality traits. And, when I'm working, I don't typically ask for permission to change things. I just do it. I've always been told, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And that's just kind of a personality thing. I'm a very natural skeptic of authority. That came from my upbringing for sure. I always like to bring a distinct point of view. It's black or it's white. It's not gray. This is how it is. This is, my distinct point of view. It doesn't have to be right all the time, but I have a point of view. I do like to bring in humor. I can't take myself too seriously. Really have this, kind of idea of like a DIY attitude. If you're not going to be able to do it, I'm just going to go and do it. That's really where I think a lot of, collage and doing stuff by hand has really kind of put me there. But when you look at these things, that I think really kind of shape up my professional attitude, it's very in line with just being a punk. And it's definitely where I feel like I've landed as a professional. And, the way that I see it is, being a punk really fits well into an innovation team. So, this is a generic team, if you will, full of strategists, researchers, trend people, business people, marketing. You have all these people that take their lives so serious, but you really need somebody who's going to just like throw a wrench in something and say, hey, that's cool that you have all this data and you're really smart, but like, hey, what if we just made it fun? Hey, what if we just made it a little bit different? Or hey, what if we, poked fun at the, the competition or whatever? And that's where I personally fit in really well, or at least I found that way. So here's some other things. I'm kind of getting to the end of my time here, but this will be really quick. So here's some other things just to wrap up on everything. Things to remember, take home with you. Your perspective is unique, right? So find a way to use it. And, if you use it, use it to solve the problems. It's super valuable. Embrace being an underdog. I've felt like, I'm an outsider. I felt like an outcast. I felt like I don't fit in with, my industry very often. I've been told no a million times. You have to embrace it. You're an underdog. And, this is something that I did actually to embrace kind of being an underdog. This is an art show that I did actually while I was freelancing. And this is all feedback that I got from clients, good and bad. Things like, a client telling me like, hey, that design really embarrasses me. Or, hey, I don't think that the idea of food accurately represents a grocery store. I don't know what that means, could you just give it another try? But also I've gotten like, hey, this is some of the greatest creative I've ever seen in my life. So, unless you're taking that risk, unless you're really putting yourself out there, you don't get both. You only get both when you're putting yourself out there. And, if you're embracing the underdog, you're going to find that the bad really goes away a lot easier. Nope. Right. Just get used to it. People are going to say no to you all the time. Get some thick skin. Because if you're different, you're going to hear no a lot. Find your people. I showed you how I met my two business partners, Theo and Emmett, as well as my other business partners at BLDG. But when you start jiving with people and they start giving you different perspectives, you find them, hold on to them. They're incredibly valuable. And last thing is, your vision is always valuable, but make sure to be open and learn to roll with the punches, because you're going to get some punches along the way, as I said. But learn, always be open to learning, and always be able to just try to find a way that you're going to be able to kind of interject yourself into situations in a really meaningful way. So with that, I do have one disclaimer that Colin Jost really didn't have anything to do with 9/11. I just used his GIF because I think he's hilarious. And that's it. So thank you, everybody. My contact information is up here on the screen. So I don't know if we have time for questions still, but with that, I'll turn it over to Ashton.
Thanks so much, Chris. It was a great presentation. Thanks so much for sharing your experience with us and some great takeaway points. I did want to share a comment from Caitlin in the YouTube stream earlier on, saying so many things in punk scene start with friends over drinks at a bar. I thought that was that was a pretty cool thing. We did get in another comment from Mary, saying it was nice to see some of the familiarity after growing up in Cincy and now living in Ludlow. I always appreciated the work that came out of BLDG, especially the murals in Covington. Such a relatable talk. So just wanted to share that with you. Everyone, was vibing and appreciated all the great words you had to say. If we do get any other questions, people in the audience, I'll send them your way if you want to answer them or anything like that. But thank you so much for your time today. Truly, really appreciate it. Thank you so much to everybody in the audience for joining us today. Let's give a virtual round of applause for Chris for his great talk today. And before we leave, just want to give another shout out to our sponsors from Midwest Design Week this year. Without you guys, this wouldn't have been possible. We hope to see everybody at today's lunchtime talk, Design Diversity and Data, with Jacinda Walker at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Central.